Hello, everybody. My name's Chad Booths. Hopefully, if I'm doing my job right, most of you know who I am. I'm very honored to have been asked to help with this forum debate. I appreciate your coming out. Local government is a very important aspect. You know, when someday there will come a time when we'll rely on large, faraway governments to deal with the problem, and they're not going to show up. And if that day ever comes, or when that day comes, depending upon how you look at it, it's your local county government that will be there to try and keep your lives together. So it's good that you're engaged in these processes and these important issues. We had twin to this debate in Delta last night, and it's very informative for me. I'm the host of the county seat TV program seen on ABC4. That's my serious job. My fun job is the outdoor recreation show At Your Leisure. We got into the county seat to do exactly this. What we're doing tonight is to try and help people learn about and be engaged in local important issues. So tonight we are going to talk about Prop 9, which is a
Prop 6.
Sorry, I'm dyslexic. I flipped my number. Yes. Yes, I was about to get there. So tonight we're going to discuss Prop 6 for half of our time, and then we will move on to discuss our commission candidates who have both graciously taken time to be here tonight. We'll start the proceedings by turning to the flag at the back, and we will do a pledge of allegiance, and then we will begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, according to the instruction of the night, we are going to continue with the coin toss that was done last night. That allows actually it's the reverse of it, isn't it? You guys went first last night?
Yes, but so he requested to go first tonight again as his preference.
Okay.
Steve did. So.
All right. So we're going to start with the initiative side for Prop 6. If you would introduce yourselves, and we will start. This will have 10 minutes for each side to talk. They'll make their presentation, at which side there'll be 3 minutes for the opposite side to respond in rebuttal after they're all done, and then we'll move on to the candidates. So please introduce yourselves, and the time is yours starting right now.
My name is David Remkus. I'm a building contractor, and I live out in Flowell.
Steve Maxfield. I guess we're going to start right out with Prop 6, what it is, what it isn't. Since I'm the drafter, first we're going to talk about what Prop 6 does. Then we'll talk about what the need for it is and what the alternatives are. Because of events that happened right here in Millard County, where certain conditional use permits were approved without a recommendation from the Planning Commission, and the public was excluded from some of those other additional opportunities, there has been some real heated debates, some hurt feelings, and even some half and mistruths have been spread around. So I would like to correct the record as best I can. If anybody knows me, I do the best I can, and I document everything that I do. If I misspeak, call me on it, I will correct it. The initiative, land use amendments, is right here. I would put that most of you haven't read it, because if you had, it's going to answer every single question we're going to go over tonight. It's only a page long, and it specifically on page, it says the Millard County Code shall be amended as follows. Swine concentrated animal feeding operation, CAFOs are prohibited in Millard County. CAFOs are defined in this initiative as any swine CAFO is defined by U.S. federal, state regulation or the Millard County Code, whichever is more restrictive. The Millard County General Plan shall be amended to prohibit swine CAFOs and CCAFOs. So what we're going to look at now to see what that really means, because I've heard that it bans all pigs, all swines, our historical use of animal husbandry in this county, and nothing can be farther from the truth. This is the definition that the state of Utah has adopted, which is the same as from the EPA. And you have three classes of CAFOs. You have a small CAFO, which as far as pigs is less than 750, and that one is never considered a CAFO for regulatory purposes unless on an individual basis it's determined to be a substantial polluter. So, hey, you're still good there. That's basically an animal feeding operation. Where we get into problems is when they're medium CAFOs, which is 750 to 2,499. There, those are not CAFOs for regulatory purposes unless it meets one of two definitions of discharge. So basically, if they got to apply for a discharge permit and they're having an anaerobic lagoon, at that point, they become a CAFO. And you have large ones, which are 1,000 and more. So in effect, we're banning any swine CAFO that's going to require a discharge permit, which is an anaerobic lagoon. Are we the first state? Are we the first county to ban anaerobic lagoons? No. There are states that have prohibited them and say there will be no more of those lagoons. There's too many problems with them. There's other states that have put moratoriums. Now, when we get into those lagoons, we're talking about smells, we're talking about odors, we're talking about nuisances. And it creates a lot of problems. And it's been said that there's maybe new technology, we can deal with it. There's technology today, but it's cost prohibitive. Meaning that it's cheaper to put all that waste out in the desert on a 60 milliliter tarp and hope that there aren't any problems with it. Those lagoons have been shown to discharge into the waters of the United States, kill thousands of fish, surface waters, aquifers, wells, Lake Michigan. Those are well documented here. Now, the odors is not just a smell that is unpleasant. In 2001, the Central Utah Southwest Board of Health found that the negative health effects on workers to be well established. Unpleasant odors can produce and impair moods and increase stress, which may influence health through biological mechanisms that include changes in the immune system function, quoting a study from University of North Carolina. Respiratory illnesses were found to be elevated and statistically significant in Milford during each year from 1992 through 1998. But if you would have read all of these whereases in here, we have over 20 sources of information that we pulled from. Over 20. And to this date, in any debate, in any discussion, nobody's come in here and says, hey, property loss, you're only going to decline 3% to 88%. Maybe that study's flawed. You might be exposed to hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, or other oxide, irritants, volatile organic compounds. We've never looked at that. Nobody's come from Smithfield or anybody else and says, hey, we're safe. We don't have any of those problems here. We've had discharges in Milford with backflows from lagoons into wells of over 80,000 gallons that went unreported for 45 days. We have an industry that has to be subsidized. And I'm not talking the $1 million a minute agriculture gets worldwide, but they have to be subsidized. In 1950, according to Wikipedia, if you look at Wikipedia, and we can simply go there, it's in 1966, it took 1 million farms to house 57 million pigs. In 2001, it took 80,000 factory farms. So basically, historically, if you divide that out, that's only 57 pigs per farmer. None of those would be considered a swine CAFO. None of them would put out the waste that would kill tens of thousands of fish. None of them would put out the ammonia and the other toxicants that are known irritants that put you, your family, and the workers at risk. There is a study out, it's a recent one, that shows that if you've worked in a swine cave for 8 years, your long-term risk of chronic disease raises exponentially. Now, we've been told that we need to do this for economic benefit. And I'm going to go to Pumbaa Farms, and it was asked yesterday, what is it in the county? Pumbaa Farms was going to build a 2,000-acre industrial with 7 of these big barns, 35,000 hog facility. He was going to employ 7 people. Out of those 7 people, this comes from his application. I've got it here if you'd like to look at it. The economic benefit to the county would be $75,000. If you divide that out, that's 1 job per hundreds of acres. If you look at the cost of providing security, road maintenance, other infrastructure, it becomes a net zero. In fact, there's a paper here that I have from John Eichard, and it's the economic realities of CAFOs. They've been studying them for 30 or 40 years. And because we're using less people to produce more, we're displacing 90% of the workers, 90% of the farmers. Historically, you can see that happen. It says this process inevitably results in fewer and lower paid workers, fewer managers per unit of production. The economic reality is that CAFOs inevitably degrade and destroy rural communities where they locate. Industrial agriculture promises rural economic development, but instead brings social and economic desecration. Like I said, this is all covered right here. Nobody has refuted it. They've claimed that we've gone out with half-truths and spread lies. Not true. Everything that we have is documented. Now, you might want to say, why are they going to put 3 million pigs in Millard County? China lost half of their pigs, 350 million pigs, in 2 weeks, basically, spread 2,000 miles, airborne. That's 25% of the world population. They don't know if they can ever get out of the soil, the water. They're still struggling with it today. Millard County becomes very natural to try to replace part of that. The I-15 corridor is along a corridor that you can ship fresh. You can send the pork to the slaughter plants, and it can go as fresh pork overseas. So we've been told by multiple sources that today there's demand for 10 to 15 million new pigs along the I-15 corridor and 3 million pigs in Millard County. Now, it's been said that there's less than 1 million pigs in Utah right now. Well, we've got articles from 2013 that Milford is putting out 1.2 million hogs. They just got approval and finished building out. There's only two swine CAFOs in Millard County, 1 minute. But they just finished building out what's called the Pinnacle Finisher Farms. The Pinnacle Finisher Farms are down by the windmills. That farm alone is permitted for 980,000 hogs, 134,400 on the Millard County side. There are 1,000 reasons to vote for Proposition 6, and there's only one reason to vote against it. And that one reason is if you think your meal ticket's going to be punched by raising and doing these factory farms at the expense of your neighbor. That's the only valid reason. These have been showed, and I'll close with just the county code. I got 5 seconds. Just let me pull this up. The Millard, I'll do it in rebuttal, but the Millard County Code, just specifically, just give me 10 seconds, says that in Millard County, we want to promote development that is not divisive and enhances instead of distracts from our unique lifestyle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will turn to the against Proposition 6 side. If you please introduce yourselves, and you will have 10 minutes.
You want to introduce yourself first?
I'm Jason Christensen. Myself, my wife Jennifer, my brother and sister-in-law own and operate the sow farm out north of Flowell.
I hope it's okay if I stand too. My name is Erin Sorensen. My husband Whit and I own a small farming and ranching operation in Delta. We raise sheep. I am not a hog farmer. I actually don't have any intentions of becoming one. And by definition, our farm is a very just small family farm. And I'm not here as an expert. I want to be very clear about that. I am here as a resident of Millard County, involved in the farming and ranching community. It's my lifestyle. It's how I'm raising my family. And I fundamentally believe that Proposition 6 is wrong. I want to be very clear that to vote no does not mean that everything he just said is going to happen. It's a conversation. We have regulations in place in our county right now that have been determined by our seated governing body, the county commissioners. Anyone who would want to farm or do any type of industry in Millard County has to receive the permits that are required. They have to meet the burden of regulation. I'm very proud of where I come from and what I do. I'm a mother of 4 children, and I raise them on the farm because I feel like that's where we should. I feel like I heard a saying once that rural Utah's biggest export is their children. And what they mean by that is we are really great at raising our families to be good people. But we don't lay the groundwork to build up economic development and businesses in our communities. And I want to give you a story because Mr. Maxfield stated that CAFOs destroy family farms and take jobs away from them. So I'm going to walk you through a real life example here in Millard County. This is Jason Christensen and his wife Jennifer, and I just want to thank them because I think they're being very brave to come out here and defend what their family does for a living. Jason's dad passed away last year. I didn't know him, but it's a sensitive subject for me because my family has gone through the generational transition where my grandpa had to split the farm up, and my family farm isn't doing very well because of it. When Jason's dad passed away, there was a little over 100 acres that they could farm. They had been farming them for generations. They couldn't make a living as a family on that property, so they had 2 choices. They could sell, which definitely destroys a family farm and gets rid of jobs, or they could change. That's what we have to do in agriculture. That's what we have to do in every business. We meet the demands that are currently being asked of us. So what they did was they dried up 27 acres, ground that was already being irrigated, water that was already allocated to them, and they put in a hog farm. Not a big corporation. They put in a CAFO. A CAFO, by definition, can be a family farm, but that has to be a size that can support them. I asked someone today to run the numbers for me. I'm not a water person when it comes to water rights, but they told me that the Christensens are currently using 16 acres worth of water to run their hog farm per year. So they are actually being more sustainable than they were by changing. That CAFO saved their family farm. It didn't destroy it. It's the hero of this story, and it happened here. I'll tell you that there are 7 hog farms operating in Millard County right now. There has not been one complaint against them and not one environmental citation. I would never want to discredit what Mr. Maxfield's saying. There's bad actors in every industry. I'm a physical therapist assistant, and I have heard horror stories, but not by me. My boss is a great person who really benefits this community, and I would hate for restrictions to be put on us because of bad actors elsewhere. The Christensens are doing what's been asked of them, and I really respect them for it. And now I want to address some things that I would like to clear the air about a little bit. Last night, they were asked directly, and he stated that there was no outside radical groups. I want to be perfectly clear. I do believe that Mr. Remkus and Mr. Maxfield and the It's Our Future drafted this Proposition 6. I believe it came from within our county. and I believe it's supported by local people. It came from here. But then I got a phone call yesterday too. And someone said, "Did you see what's in your mail today?" I said, "No." And I got a screenshot of this. I don't know who else's kids race to the mailbox in the afternoon to get the mail, but mine do. And I thank heaven that I got there before they did, because this does not represent the face of Millard County Ag. All of you know farmers and ranchers. I'm quite sure of it. Some of you, maybe some yourself. My kids wouldn't understand this. And do you want to know why? Because this isn't what they know. This isn't what's going on here. My kids understand that they do their chores before they eat their own dinner. We have sat up in the barn, freezing cold, doctoring sick animals to health. That is what Millard County farmers and ranchers do. Think about the people. I want you to actually envision someone you know in agriculture right now in your mind. Are they good neighbors? Do they contribute to our society here? Think about the things that kids learn. Think about the way they positively impact the culture of this community. It's not just about the $75,000, and there are costs associated with that, but guess what? There's also other benefits that were left out of that conversation. What about the concrete guy and the welder, the HVAC and the plumber, the guy who delivers their gas and the diesel that it might take to, what's your gas bill a month? I don't even want to ask. We build each other up in communities. I would encourage you to vote against Proposition 6, because a vote against Proposition 6 states that unlike the unrest and the divisiveness that we have seen in politics this year, we believe that here in Millard County, we can have conversations. Let's have the conversation of how do we protect our wells? Is the Department of Water Quality doing enough? Because ask me if I care if my water's polluted. Yes, I'm a mother of 4 children. There's been a lot of lessons learned in 2020. But if any of you, like me, walked into a grocery store in March and saw empty shelves, I have talked about food insecurity being a national issue for a long time, and I never understood it. U.S. citizens have no business exporting our ability to produce food. So please know, we are not talking about a corporation tonight. Actions like these, actions like Proposition 6 hurt me and my family farm. I won't speak on behalf of Smithfield. I don't work for them. I don't know them. But I can speak from my own experience. I feel like I should clarify too that this was not sent out by It's Our Future. It says so right on the back. It says it was paid for by the United Animal Rights Coalition. And so I think in all fairness, I do need to disclose that. However, when you go to their Facebook page, there's many posts of thanking the efforts of It's Our Future and Mr. Maxfield for their efforts in Millard County. They didn't do this. You didn't do this, but you opened the door for this, and this hurt my family farm. I would just encourage all of you to please vote no, so that we can keep the conversation civil and going in our county.
Thank you. You have, we now go back over to the in favor of the initiative, and you have 3 minutes for additional response.
Absolutely. And the first thing that I'd like to point out, that you said that you have no plans for a swine CAFO. There's nothing in Proposition 6 that hurts or affects your family farm. In fact, it could actually protect it. Because where we have these other swine CAFOs that are so large, the economic reality is it cost China $3 trillion when they lost all those pigs. And one of the dangers is private pig ownership. So there are places where if you have these big swine CAFOs, you're not allowed to own private pigs. The second thing that I'd like to address very clearly is we're told that there's laws and ordinances to make these guys be good neighbors. Well, those laws and ordinances for nuisances, where they have a $500 million judgment against them, are simply overturned by legislative acts that transfers our property rights to them. In fact, Utah law prohibits county may not here it is. A county shall exclude the definition of public nuisance in county law or regulation of public nuisance, an activity conducted in normal course of agricultural operation is defined, or an odor. It further says, and it says an ordinance or political subdivision that would make the operation of an agricultural operation or apparatus to an agricultural operation a nuisance, or provide for abatement of the agricultural operation as a nuisance, does not apply to an agricultural operation. So the fact of the matter is, there are ways to do better lagoons to make it safer for our communities, but it costs too much money. If it costs too much money, then the family farmer can start farming. So we transfer those back on to the community. You have diminished property values. But I talked to commissioners today, I've talked to the county attorney, I've talked to Adam Richens, and and the last thing that I'm going to point out, there has been complaints. There's only 2 swine CAFOs operating in Millard County. The Christensens, where there was a complaint that they were in violation of their conditional use permit, and action was taken on that. Those were complaints, those were actions. Specifically, Jennifer said there would be no farrowing, that this was a finisher barn, there would be no farrowing. 6 weeks later, there was farrowing without public comment. Furthermore, that facility changed from 3 million gallons to 42 million gallons in discharge without going through the redoing of the conditional use permit, which Jason actually says the reason for this giant lagoon, this farm would produce more manure than you could discharge as a fertilizer in all of Millard County. Good enough, thank you.
You have a few more seconds.
Okay, I had him 0 in that. So the point is, we've already had actors, and I'm not even going to blame it on them, is we're going to do farrowing. And Smithfield says, well, we're not going to do farrowing, we're going to do finisher. And Smithfield comes in and says, instead of a $2 million facility, go to a sow barn and we'll give you a $10 million loan. So the problem is, it's not a family farm because they don't have the autonomy. They're under contract to produce a certain amount of pigs in a certain way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your turn. 3 minutes.
Sorry, I get fidgety when I sit. My response would be back to that. I listened to Jason describe, I would encourage you to go watch the live stream last night, talking about the way that their lagoon operates. And while you hear, it's really interesting to me how they're doing it. The real story there is that the state requires this. Well, the Christensen's liner is thicker. While the state requires monitoring for potential leaks and for pollutants in the wells, they not only monitor for that, but they also monitor to see if water quality improves. The story there is that they are doing the best job. They're going above and beyond what is required. He talks about the cost affiliated with that. Isn't that our right as citizens, as people who are building businesses, to choose what we take on, what that cost is to us, and if it's worth pursuing? I promise you, if it doesn't work, we won't do it anymore because we'll be out of business. I believe that this referendum is dangerous. I don't appreciate the comment that it doesn't hurt my family farm because, quite frankly, you don't work on it. I do. And it did. You have hurt the face of farming and ranching in Millard County by opening up this conversation. Please. Together in Millard County, can we please just come together and work? Work for the best solution for both our economy and not just our economy, what that means for our children and our families and all of our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our part of this presentation on Proposition 6, 9 for those of us who are dyslexic. We will clear and exchange the tables for a moment. We'll reset them and we will have our commission candidates come forward, and we will continue on from there. Are we ready to proceed? Allow me to introduce our candidates for County Commission. They are filling the one seat that is up in this election this year. To my right and your left is Bill Wright, a member of the Republican Party. And to my left is Ed Phillips, who is running on the United Utah Party as a candidate for County Commission. And we will start with an opening statement for each candidate. Which one of you started first last night? Was that you, Bill?
Yeah, I'll do it again.
Ed, we'll let you start this evening. So we'll give the candidates a few minutes to 10 minutes of time to make your stump speech.
Thank you.
So Ed, take it away.
I'll get a stopwatch going here. First off, I'd like to thank the State House Museum, the curator, and his staff to accommodate this here this evening, and also the Chronicle Progress for organizing and putting this thing together, and to Mr. Chad Booth, taking the time out of his busy schedule to be here to moderate this conversation here this evening. I'd like to thank my wife and one of my daughters here I'm sorry, I got somebody there prompting me to get on the mic here. Wife and daughter that's here with me tonight also. My name is Ed Phillips, a lifetime resident of Millard County, and I'm running for County Commission seat C. Simply because of my background here, I fully understand county government, and actually ready to start from day one. I am very familiar with county commission duties. I've worked over the years with, I counted up the other day, actually 18 different county commissioners over the period of time that I served as a sheriff. That made up several different makeups of county commissioners. So I'm totally familiar with the county commissioner's operations, and being associated in county government as many years as I was, I am also familiar with just about every other elected office and position in the county. I am retired. I have time on my hands to devote a full-time effort to this job of county commission. It's evolved over the years from a part-time position, but I can guarantee you, if you talk to a county commissioner in Millard County today, they're going to tell you a little bit different story than a part-time, that it's a part-time position. So I'm ready and willing, and have stated thus far that I'm committed to put in the time. That's my history. When I was a sheriff, I put in whatever hours it took to get the job done. I commit to do the same for this. I am, again, familiar with the management and oversight duties and responsibilities of the commission. It's a large and complex job. And I believe right now there needs to be some changes in how that operates, how that oversight and different responsibilities are dealt out. I think this county is at the point where they seriously need to start considering a supervisory position, intermediate between the county commissioners and the various departments, not offices, various departments that the county commission is directly responsible for those management duties. One of the things that prompted me to run for this office, and I've observed this for years. It was taking place while I was in office as the county sheriff. After that power plant was built over in the Delta area, it represented over 80% of the tax base of this county. And there was a lot of tax revenue flowing into the county coffers as a result of that. So much that many things were built as a result of that revenue flowing in, things that were needed. The recreation, all the recreation services that you're provided with today come from county government, and as a result of the benefit of that tax base, many buildings have been built as a result of that tax base. But it's been, and while that money was flowing, the county has been able to put away several $1 million in a what they call a tax stabilization trust fund. It's a trust fund that's very substantial, but it can't be touched without the vote of the people. And the way this tax base has been sinking, unless it gets corrected with some increase in other businesses, other industry being brought into the county, my concern is that we at least very soon stabilize this tax base so it's not continued to sink. So it's my pledge to you, if elected, and I preface everything I say tonight with that, if elected, and please understand it would be one commissioner. It takes at least 2 commissioners to effectively change anything within the county government in the commission duties. But I would pledge to you that to manage what revenue the county deals with in a frugal and responsible manner, in hopes of preventing any tax increases in the future. Now, there have been small tax increases occurring as this tax base has settled lower and lower every year. We all know it. We've felt it from time to time. They've been small, and in past commissions, as far as I'm concerned, have been very frugal and managed these resources very closely. Fact remains, it's still on that sliding scale going down. So we're in for a little tough tread for the next few years. There's some things about to come online. There's some things that we thought were coming online that has vanished. If you follow the news at all,
No, I merely clearing the throat.
Potash, the Crystal Peaks project, which would have been a big deal in this county. It's gone. So we're playing around with a lot of guesswork and whatever. But one thing that hasn't happened, as far as my view and my observation over the last several years, is a real strong and aggressive approach from county government, which is one of their responsibilities, to get out there and get shaking the bushes and getting some industry, economic development types of industry to move into this county. Anything that we have here over the last several years, folks, has been people knocking on our door, can we come in? There hasn't been very little, if any, going out and hustling for the economic kinds of development we need. There's been a lot of discussion for the last year, maybe going on 2 years, of this inland port situation up in Salt Lake County. Well, for the most part, those people don't want it. It's something that's being shoved on them, like most things are in this state, by the state legislature. And when that first started evolving and developing, I wrote a very lengthy letter to the editor in the local paper saying, here we are in Millard County with all kinds of infrastructure already in place, 2 interstate highways, another major interstate highway, Highway 50 and 6, the Union Pacific main line running through here. We got plenty of electricity. We've got two large high pressure natural gas lines going through this county. The only single thing that we're really tight on, and we all know it, and it's been part of the previous discussion about the hog farms, is water. Water is an extremely valuable commodity here in this county right now. But there is so much potential. I mentioned in the meeting last night an acronym you never hear anymore, the Wilderness Study Area, WSA. And nobody's gone after that for years, and we need to either get the federal government to put up or shut up on and releasing the vast mineral deposits that are in this county that have been locked up for years with this WSA nonsense. I would take an extremely aggressive approach in economic development. It's something that really interests me, and I know I can do some positive things in that regard. In closing, and I'm getting shut off here pretty quick, I know that. I also pledge to work very closely and cooperatively with the other two commissioners in all areas that it's possible to do so. And I wholeheartedly am willing and able to work with all of the other elected officials in the county. I'm very familiar with them, familiar with their jobs, and happy to go see the times up over here.
Thank you very much.
Who's keeping time? You're the...
He's the official timekeeper.
Okay.
I'm just trying to keep track of it. We were on the same page.
I see you had a clock running there.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. We next turn to Bill Wright, who's the candidate of the Republican Party running for this commission seat. Mr. Wright, 10 minutes is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, it's an opportunity to be here. I have a lot of respect for people who have interest in government. And some would ask me, and I answer the question at the time, why are you interested? During the beginning of time, I've seen how governments affect people's lives. We can find lots of good things that's happened throughout the world in every instance. It wasn't about who you know or what you build or how smart you was or anything else. When you have people that have happiness and joy and have liberty, those people prosper. You don't have to prosper for them. Those people prosper. And we have to create that. Elections have results. I'm sure you've heard that. And the pattern that you set of governance is a pattern that, like anything else in life, seldom do we see the results of our actions for many generations. The blessings of living right and making good choices don't generally come to us. I live in McCormick for many years. I live in McCormick. We've resided in Millard County for 15 years. We have a dairy out there. I have a wife who's not present tonight. I have a daughter. My wife got her knee operated on last week, so she didn't know whether she could handle the stairs. But anyway, we've enjoyed coming down here, and we've enjoyed our operation and the opportunities we've had to do many of the things that we're doing. I guess that we got into some conversations last night, and let me first say I appreciate Ed. I see different candidates running for positions, and Ed and his family are working very hard. I compliment that on their interest and willingness to go out and do the things they're doing. Ed we don't have a lot of contact and association, but what we have, he's been a gentleman. I appreciate that. Even though our philosophies are very, very different. Last night we got in a discussion. Ed brought it up, I brought it up, and I think you'd find that we agree. So what's the number one thing, if you could line things up, what should we be concerned about our county? Ed has talked about a lot of the details, and I'm not going to skip over them because I think we're going to have more time, and we'll have time in the near future that you can ask questions and talk about some of those details that he's talked about. But I want to talk about economic development. Ed has already described what the potential would be for our county if we didn't continue to go after and receive that economic development. That potential is raise taxes, and generally which create a hardship on us. But I want to describe one of the things that we can do, and I'm going to do that. I read a quote last night, and I want to read it again. And I want to talk about one concept of that economic development. This quote was by John Adams, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, which is a perfectly capable person and the governance of men. The moment the idea is admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the laws of God, anarchy and tyranny commence. Property must be secured or liberty cannot exist. Of course, we've just talked about the issue of Proposition 6, and we can see the upside or downside. This property will not, this county will only prosper if we make it a good place to live. If people can come here and be able to use the fruits of their labor and take care of their family, that's why we all go to work. Maybe a few that don't, but that's why most of us go to work. When we take away the right to use our property and it's taken away from us to support others, and we don't have that right to build our family, our farms, or whatever businesses that we may take, it's kind of like saying, well, yeah, we're going to take all the money out of your bank account. You still have your account, you still have your bank number, you still get your statement, but you have no money in your bank. We need to secure property rights. Secured property rights brings prosperity for every single one of us. It isn't what we fund. It isn't that we fund the sheriff's office or the rescue, or we fund the transportation, or the situation comes up with the transportation building here. That's not what creates prosperity, where we get that right. And those details are important. What we do with our resources, sometimes it's hard for government to get value out of their spending. We see that particularly on the federal level. We spend a lot and return very little. It's important we get value out of what we spend and what we do, but we need to secure our property rights and be able to develop an environment where the question that's asked to me most often is that how can we create an environment in Millard County where our children grow up, they get out of high school, and they have to leave. Most of us don't want them to do that. They'd kind of like them to stay around. They have to go someplace else because they can't make a living here. Well, we can solve that problem. It's not that we fund this building or that building or that building. That's not what's going to bring them back. What's going to bring them back is an attitude of prosperity, that they can start businesses, that they can use the resources we have to be able to feed their family and take care of those families. Now, years ago, it wasn't maybe easy to see the results of when we make bad decisions in governance of people. There's hundreds of ways we can govern people. It is important that we govern us correctly to lead to the prosperity that we would like. Most of you seen just recently the situation, what's happening in our country, and I will take one example of Portland. I have some business associates that basically, I think it was about 10 years ago, had a business and rented a building downtown Portland where all the riots were going on. I've asked him about that. He says we was paying about $4,000 a month for building there for office in downtown Portland. Well, we see what's happening. That is 3 or 4 decades of a disrespect for property rights, a disrespect for businesses. It's not about agriculture. It's about a respect for every business on that street. You've seen what happened to them. That's the results. And when we lose that disrespect, when we open the door, we might think, yeah, one proposition don't do much, but all you've done is open the door that thing, we can compound it over and over again. And as soon as we have citizens that become dissatisfied with what's happening or something like this, and it's generally no harm, it's more of an inconvenience. I understand that my dairy is an inconvenience for someone who might live right there. I don't contend against that. So we need to understand the difference between what's damaging and what's an inconvenience. Well, I talked to my friend just a week ago. He can now go down and he can rent that same building for about 50 cents a day. That's what's happened. And that's what happens to us when we develop these attitudes of disrespect for people, disrespect for labor, and disrespect for property. I'm sure you have other questions. We'll go on and talk about more details later, what you'd like to talk about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to begin questions right now. These are questions that are compilations of topics that were stimulated by last night's conversation. People have communicated with the newspaper and other various sources. We will pose the questions. We will allow each candidate to respond to them, 3 minutes. Then we will go into a 30-second rebuttal, and we will alternate who goes first on each question. I would like to start with the issue of water. Both candidates have mentioned this as an important issue. Snake Valley water has been an issue with this county, and a very touchy one, and the aquifers are in need of some assistance and help. How would you address the situation of water development in the county, and what do you see as a route to improve water and water availability? And I'll start with you, Mr. Phillips, and then I will go to you, Mr. Wright.
Well, that's actually a pretty tough question, because we have what we have, and in flow into the county, the severe river flow, we don't control that. Mother Nature pretty well controls that. Some of the communities, the one I live in, is, I'm certain now, the only town in Millard County that doesn't rely on pumping some well water for culinary purposes. So it's no secret that over the period of a number of years through the state controls and allocates rights to what water we have, of all the streams that flow out of the hills that people have water or have rights to, but they don't own the water. So we're at the mercy of what flows out of the streams into our area, and the rest of it comes out of an aquifer under us, and it for about as long as I've been alive, or have been aware of wells, pump wells, working on farms when I was a young man, that aquifer's fluctuated a little bit, but for the last, I would say, 2 or 3 decades, it's just been on a pretty steady decline. We see evidence of it all around. So conservation, preservation simply has to be the best and only answer we have to conserve. The idea that we can develop water is a foregone conclusion, that we're already overtaxing the aquifers. Nobody knows, as many geologists or losing the term of the other one, hydrologists, you'll never get any 2 out of 10 to agree where our aquifer water comes from, which directions it's flowing, and so therein again it comes up the big issue with what was discussed previously with the hog farm situation. And my principal concern with it is, wastewater and the possibility of contaminating our only source of water, basically in this county, for cities and for those that live out on the family farms, comes out of that same aquifer. So I'm at a loss quite frankly, to tell you how we're going to develop more water.
Mr. Wright.
I'll agree with that. I'm at a loss. However, I think he explained what's going on, and it's easy for us to blame. You know, we can blame Nevada, we can blame the pigs, we can blame this, we can blame that. Part of the discussion we got in that Ed didn't bring up is basically we don't own the water. We have a right to use it. If there's none there, we really don't have none. There's nothing that guarantees us water. I think we should all take it upon ourselves as much as possible. A lot of us here are water users. You are to at least study and have some preference towards trying to conserve water with our crops, with our pig operations, with our dairy. And I think we're all pretty much aware of that. But the state controls our water. We had a discussion last night on measuring and everything else. At some point in time, as we continue to get dry, I would think that we're going to have more and more regulation, more and more oversight. How helpful that is, we might save a little bit of water. I'm not sure we would save as much as the contention that it creates. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. However, is it a contentious thing when the state or the sheriff's in your yard every day? And up till now, we've trusted people. And we can continue to trust people if we'll keep our virtue and we'll keep our sense. And we have good government that sets a good example for us. We can continue to trust people. I would like to think that that might be something that we could look to in the future, to continue to trust our people. Not to offend anyone, but one thing we don't talk about much is we talk about this and that and the state and everybody else, this neighbor, that neighbor. But we just need to get on our knees, because that's where that's one of the sources that can help us. I think all of us know that. I'm not telling you nothing new. But there is some ways we could solve our problem without nothing happening. And we would all hope that we have better years than we've had in the past, and the past years have perpetuated the conversation that we have right now. So thank you.
Okay. I think I'll forgo a follow-up, because I think both of you said all there is to say on this topic. Economic development is an issue that is of importance to this county. You both have mentioned it in your conversations. What would you do as the brand ambassador for the county, and how much time would you dedicate to bringing new businesses into the area, and what types would you focus on? I will start this 3 minutes with you, Mr. Wright.
So did you ask how much time or what? Okay, give me your question again.
You got 3 minutes to respond to that.
To the question I didn't hear?
To the question, which is, okay, you are the brand ambassador for the county. How much time would you spend, and how would you approach economic development?
Well, different than water, it's something we can probably do something about. I would think a majority of your time should be spent, rather than building kings here and approaching economic development. I've already told you previously, one of the things we need to do is, you can bring corporations down and everything else, and we can all take them out for Mexican food. We have good Mexican food in this county and a variety of other stuff. You can't do that, but that might not buy you much. I think we need to make this a desirable place to live. When a corporation or someone comes here, they want a desirable place for their people to live. And probably a majority of your time, I think the county has employees. A lot of the day-to-day stuff, you should have help doing that. You need to be the ambassador. As a county commissioner, you're the ambassador. You can't send an employee to do that. We can send some business people here that, but basically you need to be the ambassador. You need to be on the front line. You need to be the one out talking to people. You need to be the one encouraging people to move in our county. But they won't come. This is, right now, my opinion is the plan has kind of spoiled us. I think Ed would agree with me, maybe not if you don't tell me, that The county, I know when I was in the state legislature, we seen budgets of county. Millard County, in relationship to the size and area of other counties, you might like it or not like it, was always better funded than any of the other counties because they had a really good resource and a cash cow. My opinion is, not blaming anybody, that kind of slowed down a little bit our aggressive nature because we really didn't need it. We was doing fine. And in talking to people in state trust lands, we have a lot of state lands in here, and they're bringing in people, the untapped potential mining and minerals in the desert. I think there's things there that we don't even know about. We have great potential. Some opinions don't feel Millard County has been inviting. I felt that maybe my opinion, they haven't been inviting because they wasn't in a place they really needed the resources. We're across that bridge now. We need to be inviting. We can't limit property rights. We have to secure rights. We need to be inviting to those people.
Ed, your turn, 3 minutes.
We do need to be inviting, and that has to do with our overall environment. We have a very good infrastructure in place here in Millard County. Right today, we could accommodate some tremendous growth into this county. Our schools are not anywhere near full. Our transportation system here in this county is in good shape. But I'm here to tell you right now that I am committed, if given the opportunity, will not sit still. I will be out very aggressively seeking economic development. I would go up to the governor's office, the state legislature, and say, put up or shut up. They've been talking for the last several years about the poor rural counties and how they're going to get out and help with economic development, help spread the wealth off of the Wasatch Front. I think that the potential's there to do it. It's just getting the will to do it, or getting somebody from this county up there representing this area that will aggressively go after these things. Again, I talked a few minutes ago about this inland port situation, and this publication come out from KSL here just not very long ago. It mentions every county south of Utah County, east to west, clear to the southern border, in play for the rural counties vying for a bite of Utah's global trade wealth. Well, I had to read it 3 times to believe who's absent in there of all of those counties. Millard County's absent. They just simply have not been aggressive in the economic development area. I was been told a couple of times, once by Commissioner Warnick, which was kind of news to me. She shared with me that this year the county has engaged two employees of the UAC organization up there. I think they budgeted around $60,000 or $70,000 for these. And they're probably good people and know the business and no doubt will help to some degree. But I've learned particularly through government, if you're not sitting at the table yourself, you don't get served. It's just plain and simple. So my approach would be to put in the time. I'm committing to you. I'll put in the time. I don't know what Mr. Mr. Wright's time commitment could be. He's never said, but I'm here to tell you I'm saddled up and ready to go. I just happen to be in a position to do that, so I'm being shut off, so I'll shut up.
Do you have any counter response to that you'd like to make?
I was asked a question. I'll respond to that question. I've been asked that question before. Many of you know I'm not retired. I have a lot of things on my plate. I would like to start walking away from some of them. That would be great. I haven't done that right now. I can commit to you, I will spend the time we need to put the effort in the county commission to do those things that we need to do. but I have some other obligations too. So. I am not retired. I think most of you know that.
Do you have any additional things to add, Ed, on that question?
No, I'm just,
Okay.
I'd say saddled up and ready to go. I know where to go.
Let's go on to the next question. This has been touched on today and yesterday as well. We're talking about the need to create new tax base and new economic opportunity. But on the subject of tax base, there are issues that are a challenge to Millard County in particular. One of them is centrally assessed taxes, and the other is proper compensation for the vast number and acres of federal land through payment in lieu of taxes or other royalties that come from federal lands being placed in your county. I would like to ask each of you to address how you would approach changing the status quo as far as getting your fair share. The centrally assessed taxes are places like the power plant, the railroad, that have assets in multiple counties, and those tax rates are not established at the county. They're established by the Utah State Tax Commission, and usually before you ever get a notice of how much it's going to come to the county, the person paying the taxes has already filed an appeal to get it lowered, and then the counties have to come in and respond to try and adjust that level. How would you approach that to fix that issue? And I think you went first last time.
I don't know. You want me?
I think you, Ed, I'll let you start with that.
It really doesn't matter to me. The one issue you talked about, if I was hearing you correctly, is the FLIPMA, the federal in lieu of tax money?
Payment in lieu of
PILT
taxes.
payments?
Yeah.
Excuse me, I was using the wrong acronym there.
They are related.
Thinking of my battles with the BLM over the years. The federal lieu and tax money, of course, is, for those of you who don't know it, I don't know how much time you'll give me to explain it, but people need to understand that there has been for years a process through the federal government that they do pay a little bit of money to counties to offset the vast areas of untaxed land that the counties provide services to. So that's what he's talking about. I've actually gone to Washington, D.C. on more than one occasion to speak and to address these kinds of issues. And, you know, most of the time you're knocking on a door that really doesn't want to open. But I do know through the Association of County Governments and the participants in that, you know, you can do some arm twisting, and some years you do a little better than other years on this PILT money. The other part of the question is the state assessed. I'll tell you again, you know, I get basically sick of talking about state this and state that, but the state tax commission really calls the shots on the valuation of those properties that they assess, being commercial, large commercial kinds of property, the power plant, the railroads, some mining operations, those kinds of businesses that do pay taxes, but county government, local government is really at the mercy of that state tax commission. And so it's a matter of who's on the commission, what their philosophies are, who's doing the appraisals and so on. It really leaves your local county assessor absolutely helpless as far as participating in that process. So beyond lobbying and turning the thumb screws on some people to see, you know, if you can get some proper adjustments made. History is every one of these big outfits that I mentioned, the power plant and the railroad and so on and so forth, every year they protest what they are assessed. So in past history is the counties had to expend money, hire lawyers and so on to go to a fist fight just to get what was originally assessed. And meant to be paid to the county. So again, it's a time-consuming, time commitment from as a county commissioner and other county officers to get into the fight. So,
Okay, thank you. Bill, your chance to respond to
Some of
uncollected
those answers are real simple. We know as centrally assessed property, as we've talked about and well agreed, decreases. That void has to be filled either with cutting services or something which nobody wants. That means our local property taxes is going to have to increase. One of the potentials that we have a lot of trust lands, a lot of state. Well, let me talk about first about the legislature in the state of Utah has consistently worked, and they work on legislation every year for 40 years to try to get the government to bend on the compensation that we would have for lands or purchase of lands or anything else. They've come a long ways. Our congressmen and senators have worked on that, but we have never been successful in getting the compensation that should be just because of a variety of, it's really not all the things in legislation. It's just the attitude. There's more people in the east than the west. So let's just say it the way it is. They could legally do it. They can throw all kinds of roadblocks at it, but there's been many state legislators that have spent years and years and years on that issue. Ed could tell you there's been 1 million trips back there meeting with people and senators and everything else. But what we can do is potentially tap as much as possible. We have lands called trust lands. When I was in the legislature, I actually developed the trust lands and the trust land policy. In our 2 schools here, we get thousands of dollars. Mary Ann, do you know? I don't know, you know. Yeah, so how much? Several $1,000s in our schools that I did that legislation that takes a portion of our trust lands, which are school trust lands, and puts them back into our schools, puts them to the education of our children. It's been a tremendous benefit for our schools. We can continue to do that. The trust lands people have a responsibility to market those properties. Here again, the trust lands people tell me that Millard County has not been really receptive. They're waiting for us to open the door. Those trust lands people you talk about marketing and economic development, you open the door, they will be in here helping you. You just got to open the door in people coming in using those resources, that a portion of that will come back to us. Goes to school education, we have schools.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just a quick response to that is, that's where the name comes from, school trust lands. Been there since the state was organized, put together. So this is nothing new. One thing is new is the overall management of trust lands. But as far as looking at the trust lands that are in this county, the ability. One thing that can happen that will help Millard County's situation can happen is the trading of trust lands that occurs I think it's occurred to some degree here in this county, but very little. Those trust land properties, those sections, school sections as they're referred to, can be traded. Government, federal government, working with the state government, can trade those properties around, hook them together, and for one reason or another, going after mineral resources or recreational resources or other things. So that would be one thing that, as far as school trust land goes, other than what it just produces to the school system, that you could possibly enhance.
With the national parks, that was very beneficial for the state of Utah, that they was able, those lands that was tied up, trust lands, that they was able to trade out and got lots of good property with resources, mining and coal and oil and other things. So that can be done.
I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of time left in the debate, and I'm going to pose a different question that is not on this sheet. It is coming from right here. You have had a chance to get to know each other, and you've been, at least last night, in a debate across from each other. So the next question that I'm going to ask is I would like you to take some time and tell me how you are different than your opposing candidate and what makes you unique to get and earn those votes from the people out there. And your turn to go first,
My
Mr. Wright.
turn first?
Yep.
I wanted to explain it in terms you understand. If any of you watched what's going on, I don't spend a lot of time watching TV, but I'm in the pickup. I can hear the news. If you look at the recent Supreme Court Justice nominee, Amy Barrett, why, you hear the terms you hear the terms all the time in Congress about, we have different philosophies about and Ed's going to explain his, so I'll explain mine. We have different philosophies about the Constitution. I think the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Mayflower Compact, the Constitution of the United States has given us a pattern, just like a spiritual pattern for living our lives. I think that pattern is those men were men who had the precepts and the ability to put those things in place so that we could live happily for many, many years. The troubles we have in our country are troubles that we've deviated from that. I think that basically the things that we have continued to implement, just let me say the word that nobody likes, is socialism. We cannot continue to take advantage of some to fund others. We all need an opportunity to earn the fruits of our labors. We all need the opportunity. It totally takes away the incentive for each of us. I think that's a thing that's strangling our country for now. There's something for nothing. When we implement those things, we need to have the security of our rights. I would be considered an originalist. I don't think we got a living Constitution that we change and we change. I think the Constitution protects all people, protects all races. We got in a discussion last night about my opinion on not particularly subsidies, but government, because I'm in agriculture, government help, and I made this statement, which is, people's brought back to me that I haven't participated. We had a gentleman that I respect. I grew up in his era. His name was Ezra Taft Benson. He was actually the Secretary of Agriculture. I actually talked to him as a young man about that subject, and he told me what he thought. I prescribed to what he has said, and I think that we have many other things like that. I prescribe to what he has said, and I think it protects our liberties individually if we listen to the founders and others who have gone before.
Okay. Ed, what makes you different than Bill?
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't know what makes me different from Bill, but I restate the question, if you would,
Okay.
because there's something in there that I want to jump right on. So would you just restate?
Sure. So what would distinguish your term in office that would make you unique? What is the one thing that that would give people a reason to vote for you as opposed to Bill?
Okay. Just coming out of the starting blocks, my experience, well, number one, a lifelong resident. That's no slam against Bill. I mean, I've lived my whole life here. I'm very familiar through the terms of office as a county sheriff. I'm familiar with every square mile of this county and most of the people in the county. But innovation and ambition are two things that I have and provided plenty of as I served as the sheriff. Speaking to the audience out here, again, innovation, you talk, what is innovation and how does that play into things? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I created the very first inmate placement program in the state of Utah, in the jail, created jobs and income of about $1 million a year since the mid-1980s to today, so add that up. The work crew, the benefit out of the work crew. The only county sheriff, I'm the guy that started that. A few others have copied it, some have dropped it. I think it's still working here. The benefit that's provided to the community. Law enforcement contracting and cooperative services with Fillmore City, Delta City. I can tell you this, and I can prove it. Won't take time tonight to draw out numbers. That has meant millions and millions of dollars to both Fillmore City and Delta City in savings of providing good quality law enforcement services to these communities. I'm not talking a few million. I'm talking over the period of time Fillmore contracted with the county back in around 1983 forward of probably in those early days saving them $250,000 a year. And I'd say on average over all those years at least $500,000 a year. Delta City the same way, only probably a little bit more money. They didn't start contracting until around the 1990s, 92, somewhere along in there. But it's innovation, those kinds of things. I brought an ambulance service out of the red, bleeding red. Not big money, but it all adds up. A couple of $100,000 a year. I was asked by the county commissions to take over the ambulance service. Innovation, you know. It was just a few simple things that I was able to do in bringing that management, pulling that thing together, brought it in. When I left office, it was then operating in what they call I forget the terminology now, but basically paying its way, kind of a fund, a revenue, its own revenue fund. So I assume it still is, I don't know, but innovation is what I ambition and innovation.
Okay, you'll be first on this one.
Do I get a response?
Yes, I'm sorry, you do. Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you. And I have one of my flyers here. The function of government is not to grant rights, but to protect the unalienable God-given rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Our liberty is our life is our life. We've talked about property rights. Our liberties that we can work and live and take our resources to raise our family, that we don't have government taking it away from us to give to their friends or organizations. We have services that we have to protect and take care of. We need to make sure we understand what government should be doing and grant us those rights. Government would not have to do nothing if those rights are granted us, and if we'd stand up as a people and take our responsibility, we wouldn't have to be doing all those things. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to go on to two questions that came up last night and were probably the most heated questions of the evening. So the first one, I'm going to do a coin toss on this. The first one has to do with the road barn. That was a pretty big issue. How would you have handled the road barn situation differently? And Ed, I believe you can go first.
You don't need to flip a coin on that. I'm happy to discuss that. It's what I'd characterize as a rather unfortunate happening. And in this sense, how I first was alerted to it was people contacting me and wanting to know what could possibly be done. Well, it was a little too late, actually, when they called me, of the horse facilities down here at the county property, what's locally known, called the fairgrounds, a racetrack, and so on, that stables, usable stables, a usable barn that had stables in it that was here today and gone tomorrow, basically demolished. Never applied to Fillmore City for the necessary permits for a demolition of that kind. So here today, gone tomorrow. Next thing, the county road department trucks hauling fill dirt into the area that now stands a partially finished building. Well, let's back up just a year ago. I find out that the road department, whoever, I would assume the road supervisor and evidently probably a county commissioner in support of it, a good idea, says we need a building in Fillmore, a 4-bay building. We're proposing to build a 4-bay building that could house snowplows in the wintertime. Principally, that's what the sales point was. And it could be used as a shop also, but a place to put these snowplows in the winter, so call out in the middle of the night. They're able to jump in a already loaded up, ready to go snowplow. So about $430,000 to $40,000 was allocated to build this 4-bay metal building on county property down here. Well, it transformed from that into what's sitting down there right now. There's a lot of different versions, depending on who you want to talk to, as to how that happened. The simple fact of it is, it did happen. And I'm here to tell you that it's very disturbing to me, particularly from the money end of things, the situation that the county's in and facing over the next few years, to be spending that kind of money for that kind of a building here. So what would I do about it? About the first thing I would do about it is at least make damn sure that there's a roof and the truss system put on to preserve what's already there. What's already there, before it would be finished and usable, I'm no dummy when it comes to guessing or estimating, would be at least $1.5 million and probably closer to $2 million. It's a huge building. Be a very nice building, but it's something that was clearly not needed in this instance, besides the destruction of the usable property that was down there. So, I could provide a little bit more information if we had more time. But
Okay, Bill, how would you handle that differently?
I agree, we need to put a roof on it. If I was there right now, that's what I'd do, see the roof was done. The process we're in right now is because we haven't had the checks and balances. I'm not blaming anybody. As our county grows, we have more and more. It is difficult to follow the old procedures and happen. My experience in the legislature, we have a fiscal analyst office. And basically, when I'm developing a piece of legislation, I go in there and they put a fiscal note on it. They tell me before the bill is even written, I can't get a bill written on the floor without a fiscal note. I go down there to a committee and say, I want to present this bill. This is a really good idea. What's the fiscal note? What's the very first thing we do? How much is this going to cost? How much do we assume this is going to cost? That's the way the state, maybe it's not that's the way the states, at least this state, manage their budget. How much is it going to cost? And that is a fiscal analyst. He's a financial officer that helps you develop, and the bill's like $3 million. Well, we don't have that much, so let me change this paragraph and that paragraph. Well, now the bill's $5 million. Well, let's go back and change this paragraph. Yeah, now the bill only cost you have a price tag on it. Now the bill only cost you $1 million. And then you pass that bill, and the state funds it. Then you have an auditor, which actually, after it's all done, audits exactly what's done to see that it's done correctly. So it's just a process. You know what we do in this county? We have an auditor. Guess who does the fiscal management? The auditor. So you have is that the fox in the hen house? You have the same person doing both responsibilities. You can talk to anybody in finance, any banker, anything else. They are two separate, far apart, distinct people. Can they be the same people? Yeah. I think the same person could do the job, but we have evidence that's not working. The same person or auditor could probably do the job. The problem with that is we have evidence that it don't work. How many other times has it worked? This is a glaring sore eye maybe for everybody in the county, everything. I have lots of complaints. How many times on little projects hasn't that worked? How many times where it's $1,000 here, $1,000 there that don't work? We need to change the process so we have oversight, so everybody knows what they're doing. They know their responsibility, and before these things come along, we are able to catch them.
Ed, do you understand?
I need a little time on that, and I appreciate Mr. Wright's explanation of maybe how things worked with the state. but he is clear out of the loop as far as it relates to county government. The county auditor is just what it says. She is the county auditor. She does manage the money, but let me tell you, when county budgets are set, they're set by the county commission, and they're allocated out to other offices. The sheriff's office, for an example. The auditor is not responsible for oversight over the sheriff's office budget. I'll tell you who is. The county sheriff, that's who is. Money that's allocated into those areas that are the responsibility of the county commissions and the departments that they manage are the ones that are responsible for that money. The county auditor actually has injected herself into this particular problem, telling, as I've listened to meetings, either one in person, another on Skype or whatever they call it. It was, in fact, a special meeting in order to try and move some money around to cover this $1 million shortfall, or whatever you want to call it. That's her responsibility, is to raise the red flag. The responsibility of managing that budget and that money goes right directly, in this case, to the county commission and the department heads that are under the county commission.
Okay, thank you.
That's the way it works in county government.
You have a minute to respond.
Yeah, the only thing, and I would say whatever's supposed to happen and what Ed thinks didn't work, did it? Because we got what we got. So it's not working. I mean, it might have been nice at one time, but it's not working, else we wouldn't have what we have done.
How can I disagree with that? It sure didn't work in this situation, no doubt, but I'm here to tell you that it works. I've sat and watched it work for 28 years. This particular instance, it surely didn't work. The wheels come off of the whole process somewhere, and it's certainly something that needs to be corrected. Back to what I discussed about here earlier, there needs to be some changes in how this county government operates as it relates to the commissioner's duties and so on. They are overburdened, and they are working and whatever, but this whole idea of moving along like this commissioner's over the road department. Well, let me tell you what, all 3 county commissioners are responsible for those budgets. So, you know, I've got some ideas on reorganizing it, but given the opportunity. So
I need to give Bill 30 seconds to respond to that if you choose to.
I'm good.
Okay.
I said what I have to say.
All right. The first half of this debate dealt with the pig farms and CAFOs. I would like a very short answer. This is not a 3-minute one. This is like a sentence each. Do you support the development of large-scale swine CAFOs in Millard County, such as those that are in Beaver County? Yes or no? Bill, you first.
Such are those that are in, I don't know what's in Beaver County, so I can't answer a yes or no. I know there's some down there. When you talk about size and that, so I can't give you a legitimate answer to that question.
Okay.
I support, you want me to talk about the initiative a little bit? I support the property rights. There's 2 or 3 things in the initiative that's worse than the property rights. In my experience, a legislative body, either in the state legislature, county legislature, cannot bind further legislatures. It says in this that we're bound, that any other commission from now on can't change. So if we decide we want to change, we can. So we talk about checks and balances in government. Checks and balances of government has been there from the very beginning for a couple 100 years. There's never been anything in our country that hasn't went forth with one checks and balance. In the state legislature, you can't do one thing tomorrow that binds the legislature the next day. They can go and change it. Why would we pass something like this? Let me use the example of Estelle. Are we going to tell people in Estelle 75 miles away that they can, if they wanted a farm, that they couldn't have a CAFO. But I can't directly answer your questions because I have nothing to compare. I'm sorry.
Okay, that does respond to the question. Ed?
Well, I don't know whether that was an answer or not. I guess not. I'll tell you just straight out, and given the time or whatever, I'll go through the process of why I'm where I'm at. But let me just first say where I'm at. I am opposed to factory hog farm, CAFOs, whatever you want to call them, that are being funded and organized outside of Millard County, coming in to Millard County in whatever fashion they're coming into. Forever, as the sheriff over all these years, I've supported agriculture, and I could spend 30 minutes and give you some examples of thefts, collecting debts, any numbers of kind. I'm a supporter of agriculture in Millard County, and always have been. A supporter of the family farms that are in Millard County. There's some nice ones. There, good operations. The dairies that have come into Millard County have been well cited by previous commissions and planning commissions, so on and so forth. They're clean operations. They all work well, But I got to tell you, from the information I've been able to glean from the get-go, when this thing first started out west of Hinckley, well, actually, it was a first one south of Deseret, then another big attempt out west of Hinckley. That kind of piqued my interest, and I started paying a little bit more attention who was doing this and what it was all about. And the more I get into it, I'll tell you, my single biggest concern, and we've talked about this earlier, is water. And it isn't so much consumption, it is to deal with discharge. The other kinds of things that go with it can be of, airborne, whether it's stink or pathogen diseases or anything else. Big concern to me. The current land use policy right now works on a sliding scale of, depending on the size of the operation, what the setback from a community has got to be. But my point in this is, you've got property owners, and Bill's talked a lot about this, and a lot of what he talks about, he's right on track. But as far as property rights go, but with a pig farm, huge pig farms or whatever, it isn't like one property owner here and you got the neighbor over here, and this property owner is going to be infringing on this. If you're a CAFO, your neighbor is every single solitary residence in this county. That's who your neighbor is, and that's who can potentially be, not potentially, probably would be impacted by these kinds of operations. The one in Flowell is probably about the right size, but do we want numerous farms in the one in Flowell? I think it's pretty well situated down there. But to continue on with this CAFO idea, dealing with hogs, I'm really seriously not in support of it. Be happy to sit and go down through what got me fired up on it to begin with, but I'll shut up.
Okay.
Move on.
Thanks, Ed.
I have a response.
Yes, please do. You have a minute.
I have a response that might be pertinent, might not. My grandfather run 100 ewes and on 80 acres and made a living, lived as good as I did. My dad milked 100 cows on 200 acres and make a living as good as I can. I'm not sure I can solve this problem. I know the dairy business. We have 8,000 or 10,000 cows in Millard County, something like that. I don't know. About half the dairies has gone out of business since I moved here 15 years ago. They have not all prospered. There's a few of them left. I've thought quite often, I milk 500. I'd rather milk 100 than be able to make a living. I'd rather do it. But the economic scales, I thought, how much would it be an advantage? What if those 8,000 cows, instead of being milked by 4 or 5 families, what if we could live on 100 cows? And we could raise a family think of that, that's a couple hundred kids that have to get up and do chores every day. Think about the benefit of that, the social benefit. So yeah, there becomes a point, but it's very difficult, really, honestly. My preference would be that I could live on half the cows I have, but I have to make a living. I can't, to do it and go do something else. So my preference would be, yeah, that we all had a farm, like, 200 years ago? But we're not going to go back there. So and by being on the county commissioner, I'm not going to cause us to go back there. That's not going to happen, because there's a bigger economy in the world and the country that's much bigger than me that's going to drive that. What we do here is not going to have much to do with it.
Let me just pick up on that a minute. We can talk about what's happened in the past, but we're talking about today and into the future. The little town I grew up in Kanosh, virtually, my growing up time was one big barnyard. It really was. Little dairies, this lot, that lot, and it was a typical barnyard. A few milk cows, a pig pen, 2 or 3 coops of chickens. And that, that's the way people lived. And you go down in that little community right now and try and start any little kind of operation like that, it's not going to fly. People won't put up with it. And they shouldn't have to put up with it in this day and age. I like bacon as anybody else, but we shouldn't have to take the risks that I believe that are really out there, knocking on the door, trying to get in here with these huge factory types of hog farms. The ag industry we have in Millard County right now is a big deal. It really is. It's our oldest industry, and it's a big industry, and I think a healthy industry. And I'd like to keep the whole part of that, as well as everybody else in this county, healthy.
Okay, we've gotten a fair amount of time, and we want to wrap this up. I do want to do one more question. And that is a matter of vision, okay? When you take the job of commissioner, I've watched this for 10 years, you are bombarded with tasks and chores. As I said last night, it is the only part-time job that you can be hired for that takes 70 to 80 hours a week, and it most probably will. The one question I want to ask to help put this all in perspective is, at the end of your time in office, if you are elected, what is the one thing that you want to be remembered for, the most important thing, the single thing that's most important for you to accomplish? And I think you start this time.
I'll start, yeah.
Okay.
The thing I told you about, the question that I get asked the most is, we have families that are very important to us. How can we create an environment to where our children can get, everybody's tired of their children having to go away to school. They're tired of their children living someplace else. We all like our grandchildren. So if we could get enough appropriate economic development in here to provide for at least the growth of our county. If we didn't have any other growth, the growth of our county ourself would sustain lots of businesses. And it isn't only big corporations and things like that, it's a little business on the street. What's happening now to our country is devastating. I mean, we have not even begun to see the effects. When you take 20-30% of the individual-owned restaurants and other small businesses are all going to be out of business. They're all gone. You haven't seen the effect of that yet. So as business diminish, no, who gobbled that up? The McDonald's and that's fine. They provide jobs, but they're different jobs that people can start a business. But we need a census of people. Statistics show the economies are better as you have, we have this population decrease in the world. It is significantly an advantage to have an increase of people. Now, that seems to some like, well, that creates a lot of problems. Maybe it does. But economically, Areas that grow, look what Utah's done, and a lot of that's because they have an increase of people, of population, because of families and things like that. So we need to create an environment where we might not living by each other and everybody's complaining, but if we don't create an environment where we can retain at least our own, why we'll never be able to prosper. By that environment coming in, by attitudes and philosophies and starting small businesses and people, I spend, because of my business, our horses and cattle, I spend a tremendous, it always intrigues me. We think we got to be big or not. I spend a lot of time in small Amish communities. I can go into a small Amish community with 200 or 300 families. I can guarantee you the houses are about a mile apart. You can't pass a farm that they don't have a sign out there, eggs, quilts, toys, chairs. You can't, you can stop at every house and they have a business going. They have their farm, but they're all engaged together in businesses. There's none of that here. So obviously they live different. We can't live that way. But we need to encourage that. Why don't you start a business now? Because you're regulated and they're able to do what they want. You can buy anything you need going down the street for 2 miles. You can get your wagon wheel fixed. You can get your horseshoe. You can get your harness. Somebody will make you a chair. Somebody will make you a bed. They'll do you a quilt. They'll sell eggs. They sell stuff out of their garden. It's very intriguing and interesting to go back there. It seems like we've lost that prosperity and that ability to want to do that, to want to get out and work. Now, the question is, if we could create more of an opportunity, that we had opportunities here, obviously you got to have a mindset of people that, you probably like the commission job, you got to take less salary or whatever. But anyway, that would be the thing that we can live together, and those of us who's willing to get up and work will prosper.
Okay. Ed?
Well, I'd just start off cheating a little bit, because the one thing I'd want to do is leave every function of county government in a lot better shape than I found it. But the economic development is the big thing to me, and you've heard me go on and on about it. It is my main focal point, and it's something I'm serious as a heart attack over. I will follow through on it. I know much more can be done than what's been done. You talk about providing jobs. I'm talking about providing jobs that'll provide a living salary to a family, to where, mom and pop maybe still going to be working, which most of them are nowadays anyway, but to where they can prosper. There's some real jobs, and I'll put my money where my mouth is. I've even made the statement, and I'll stick to it, that I'll offer, I'm not in this for an occupation per se. I made the statement, and I'll follow through on it. Half of my salary, I'm more than willing to provide that to the high schools here in Millard County, focused on trade schools. Getting to help provide a workforce that if there's an opportunity here in the county, those kids that we're pumping out every day that are leaving here can find something here locally. And we bring in any types of industry or so on. You see advertising right now with some of the operations here in the county, week after week after week, looking for specialties. Most of those specialty qualifications for some of these positions that are advertised, guess what? Trade school kinds of things. I think we need to just really focus on that with our school system, for whatever support, coming from the county. But I like to say, it's a big time serious thing to me. I have grandchildren in this county, and if they choose to remain here, I'd like some opportunities there for them. That's my one shot at what I want to see is in a hell of a lot better shape when I get 4 years from now, if I get elected to lead this county. And so,
good. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your willingness to run. This is not an easy job. County government is self-torture because you get elected with good ideas, you have the intent to help your community, and then you spend the next 4 years making somebody angry at you.
It isn't easy, but I'll tell you what, in my experience, it's fun. It really is.
So I commend both you gentlemen for being willing to step up to the plate and take this challenge on. For everybody that's still watching at home on streaming, I commend you for sticking with it to try to understand these issues. For those of you who came, you are the backbone of the community. You are what makes local government work because you get out and you stay engaged. Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight. And I would like to thank the paper for helping create this dialogue, which is very important in our community. And thank you again. Oh yeah, by the way, County Seat is on ABC4, and you can learn a lot about this every week. Okay, got my plug in. We'll see you later.